Well, let me walk you through what we call the VRIO decision tree, a tool that is useful for assessing whether a resource or capability is likely to create a competitive advantage. VRIO stands for valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and organized to capture value. First, is this resource or capability valuable? A resource is valuable when it results in products or features that increase a customer's perceived value, or when it allows a firm to produce at a lower cost than rivals. Value is ultimately determined by a firm's customer. Firms that win either create more perceived value for their customers, or they allow customers to retain more of their money to buy value in other ways. If a resource creates value, then we move to the next step in the decision tree. Second, is this resource or capability rare? If a resource is extremely common, then all firms can have access to it, and it leads to competitive parity. For example, pharmaceutical companies earn high returns for shareholders by producing drugs that are protected by patents, name brands like Celebrex or Viagra. The patent is a valuable resource that gives the firm an exclusive right to produce that drug and ensures its rareness for the life of the patent. Once the patent expires, then anyone can produce a generic version of the drug. If a resource is rare, then we move to the next step. Third, is this resource or capability costly to imitate? It is costly to imitate if other firms cannot imitate or copy the resource at a reasonable price. If it is not costly to imitate, then it can only lead to a temporary advantage. Drug patents tend to be very costly and practically impossible to imitate, but some resources can be replicated easily. For example, software and manufactured goods companies often invent around or reverse engineer patents. To protect valuable and rare resources and capabilities from being imitated, companies may need to erect some barriers that make it costly for competitors to copy them. We might think of these barriers as a wall that keeps competitors out. The higher and stronger the wall, the more difficult it is for competitors to scale it and copy your resources. Let's consider 3 common barriers to imitation: path dependence, causal ambiguity, and social complexity. First, some resources or capabilities are the result of a series of unique decisions that have occurred over time. In other words, the firm has progressed down a unique decision path over time that has led to the creation of certain resources or capabilities. Because these resources and capabilities depend on the specific decision path, we call this path dependence. For example, Coca-Cola's huge international market presence traces back to a decision in World War II by the U.S. Army to put a Coke within arm's reach of every soldier. Coke built plants in Europe and the Pacific Rim, and after the war they could use these plants to enter foreign markets. Second, causal ambiguity describes the problem with understanding exactly where a firm's advantage comes from. Causality refers to the notion that one thing causes another. A leads to B. Sometimes, however, the causal relationship between variable A and outcome B is unclear or difficult to disentangle. This is causal ambiguity. In many cases, it is impossible to look carefully inside a company to see exactly how they do what they do. If we can't see what they do and why they do so well, then we cannot replicate the value they create. For example, Steve Jobs took a calligraphy class in college, and he credits that class with the development of TrueType fonts. If you want to create a new type of font, however, it probably requires more than just taking a calligraphy class. Third, social complexity describes the problem that many resources reside in the complex relationships between systems, departments, and people within an organization. You may have to replicate these many social relationships to recreate the value. Think, for example, about a 3-person team. There are exactly 3 relationships in this team. If you add a 4th person, then you now have 6 relationships. If you add a 5th, then you now have 10 relationships. Can you imagine trying to exactly replicate 10 unique relationships? If the resource resides in relationships, then imitation may be impossible. If a firm can erect one or more of these imitation barriers around its resources and capabilities, then competitors will have a hard time copying them. In this case, the resource is difficult to imitate, and we can move to the next step in our decision tree. Fourth, is the firm organized to capture value? In other words, is the firm well positioned to actually capture the value created from the valuable, rare, and costly to imitate resources and capabilities? Think for a moment about America's most popular sports league, the National Football League. The NFL creates value for its fans through maintaining similar skill levels on each team so that any team has a chance of winning on any given Sunday. In fact, 18 of the league's 32 teams have won the Super Bowl. The NFL preserves similar skill levels through its organization. The league, and not each team, negotiates media contracts. The league contracts with the players' union. The league holds a common draft, and so forth. The league, and not just a few teams in very big markets, captures the value from the excitement of professional football. This has been a quick overview